Hello everybody, Danny Panetta here, and you lot are here to watch another Vantaclaw reaction video. Yes, now remember how back in October I uploaded at least I think it was October last year, when I did a short film reaction on that Washington sleep experiment? Well, even though it's probably a few months overdue for me to do so, I decided to do my first CreepyPasta reaction video on the Russian sleep experiment. I think it makes sense to do a reaction video to a narrated story of this CreepyPasta, since I did react to the short film version of it. So, this is from IReadCreepyPastas, and you all don't need to worry. I always make sure to put a link to the original video in the description box. So if you want to check out the original video that without my reaction or commentary, then please go ahead and click on the link in the description box. Now, let's get to it, shall we? And yes, I am laying on my tummy doing a reaction. I hope this doesn't turn into a freaking challenge. I hope me doing a reaction video on laying on my tummy doesn't turn into like some tummy challenge where you have to do a reaction on your tummy. That'd be weird.
In the late 1940s, a group of Russian researchers discovered an experimental gas-based stimulant which could eradicate the need for sleep in humans. 5 test subjects were chosen to test the gas, all deemed enemies of the state. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake, as the gas was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so their only means of monitoring the subjects were microphones and a few thick glass portholes into the chamber. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on, running water, a toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. Everything was 5 for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised, falsely, that they would be freed if they did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored closely, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past life, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark.
I'm not surprised. They're not
After
taught to do
5 days,
that.
they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate signs of paranoia. They stopped talking to one another, and began alternately whispering to the microphones and portholes. Oddly, they seemed to think they could win the trust of their researchers by turning over their fellow comrades. At first, the researchers suspected that this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. After he tore his vocal cords, he still continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or didn't react to it.
Yeah, I was going to say they probably didn't react to it so
whispering
well.
into the microphones
Or the way you
until the
expect.
second of the captives started to scream. The 3 non-screaming captives took books apart, smearing page after page with their own feces and pasted them over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped, and so did the whispering in the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they weren't working, as they thought it impossible that no sound could be coming from the chamber. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise.
Damn.
On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do.
I'm not gonna lie, I will admit, this is actually kind of creepy because if this generally happened, like if this wasn't just a work of fiction but actually happened, I can imagine that being really creepy, because like there's a number of things that could go wrong with doing something like this. I'll explain a bit more at the end of the video.
They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke a response from the captives. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor, or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their
Who
surprise,
says they
they
want to be
heard
freed?
one single phrase in a calm voice respond, "We no longer wish to be freed." Debate broke out among the
Yeah, I can't
researchers
talk
and
that
the
up.
government officials funding the experiment. Unable to provoke any other response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. That night, the chamber was flushed of the gas and filled with fresh air. Immediately, voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different subjects began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside the chamber. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one can rightly call the state that any of them were in living. The food rations for the past 5 days had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of rotting flesh from the dead subject's thighs and chest stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, which allowed 4 inches of red liquid to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the liquid that was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that all of them were self-inflicted. The organs below the rib cages of all 4 test subjects had been removed. While the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place, the skin and muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. All the removed blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor.
You know, listening to this, it kind of makes it feel like someone's actually picking out the flesh on my arms. It actually kind of feels like that. And if you don't feel like that, like when you listen to this, do you feel like somebody is like picking away at like your skin or something like that? Because it kind of feels like someone's doing that to my skin right now. This is creepy.
Fanning out around the bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen working, digesting what was apparently their own flesh.
This is sounding like a horror film. This is like a horror film.
Most of the soldiers were Russian operatives, but still, many refused to return to that chamber in order to remove the test subjects. The subjects continued to scream to be left alone in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another, gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. 5 more soldiers lost their lives, if you count ones that committed suicide.
Shit.
In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured and was bleeding out quickly.
This is some crazy shit.
Medical staff attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the normal human dose of morphine, and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the arm of one doctor. His heart continued beating for a full 2 minutes after he ran out of blood. Even after his heart stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word, more,
I might have to edit that out.
over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to the medical facility, the 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake.
Yeah, I'm gonna edit that out.
The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back in his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative they had given him. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out.
How the hell could you be immune to something that puts you to sleep? Oh, I guess that could be a side effect for the gas. The gas probably like nullifies the effect of that drug. That makes you fall asleep. That's probably it.
To put him to sleep. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on a wrist. It took little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject, it was found that his blood had triple the normal level of oxygen found in a human body. The muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in a struggle to not be subdued. The second survivor had been the first of the group to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head very violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought out. He shook his head yes when a nurse suggested that they try the surgery without anesthetic. He did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what little remained of his skin. The surgeon stated repeatedly that it should be medically impossible for the subject to still be alive. One terrified nurse stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk. Assuming this must be something of importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so he could write out his message. It was simple. Keep cutting.
That's creepy.
The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic. The surgeon found it almost impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were asking for the gas. The researchers tried asking why. Why had they injured themselves? Why had they ripped out their own organs? Why did they want the gas? Only one response was given. I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, an ex-KGB, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for a long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment they were back on the gas. It was obvious that, at this point, all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again, just to have something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal, but most of the time, he just flatlined. It looked as if he was repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal again. As they focused on the paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flatlines as the other one who had just died. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 other researchers. One of the 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank right between the eyes, then turned the gun to the mute subject and blew his brains out. He pointed the gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, as the members of the medical and research team fled the room. "I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you," he screamed, at what can no longer be called a man strapped to the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know. I must know. What are you?" The subject smiled.
"Have you forgotten so easily?"
The subject asked.
"We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be freed at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence when you go to the nocturnal heaven where we cannot tread."
The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's exposed heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out.
"So nearly free."
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. This is probably one. This is actually like listen to like some read like the story version of it, of this creepypasta. Um, it's actually roughly as creepy as the short film. I don't know which is more creepy. Like this, listen to like the someone reading the creepypasta story of the Russian sleep experiment, or that short film or the short film version of it that I reacted to, involving the Russian sleep experiment. Uh, well, this actually kind of made me feel a bit tired. This actually kind of made me want to fall asleep a bit because with how tired I feel. Um, well, uh, now, now I want to admit, the Russian sleep experiment was like it was one of the first 4 or 5 creepypastas I actually listened to before, back in 2014. And I want to admit, these creepypastas are actually really good because with how creepy these stories are. And you gotta have a really good imagination to actually be able to come up with these particular stories. Uh, Not to mention, uh, now, uh, now just to touch on something I mentioned earlier on in the video. Um, Now the reason why I feel like this could be something really creepy to see some people do in real life is because is some of the reasons was actually in this video. Like there's like you got like the the people who are acting as the test subjects. They would pretty much be like they would pretty much in a sense they would get like um in a way it'd be like super strong because they're staying awake and can't go to sleep. They like their bodies are sort of working into overtime in a sense, which in turn will probably make them more more stronger maybe as one potential side effect. Second thing is it might make the test subjects go crazy, where the where the where those people may start acting in the same way as these people who were acting as the test subjects had gone crazy. And you gotta admit that's true. They did start going crazy. The third thing is is like reproduce. Like, 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 what do you, how do you think the any potential offspring might turn out as like as a result of those guys being exposed to that gas for so long? Because there's a chance it might cause like certain birth defects in any potential offspring they might have. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, please don't take that in one way. I'm not trying to be mean or rude by saying that. It's just that you gotta admit that it is possible that it could lead to certain birth defects in any children they might have. Because like with how long they were exposed to that gas for. And plus there's a few other variables to go with it as well, which could in a sense backfire. Not 100% sure what other like nasty outcomes I could come up with, but I guess I guess that makes sense in a way, maybe. Anyway, the link to this original video is going to be in the description box down below, so you can watch this on IReadCreepyPasta's YouTube channel. If there's any other creepypasta video whatever that you lot might like to see me react to, please let me know in the comments down below, subscribe and whatnot, and until next time, goodbye for now.